Director Mueller, it's well established and a sad fact that the public safety services in Indian country are severely lacking, with the result that being a criminal that the criminal victimization rate on tribal lands is significantly in excess of the national average. I know you know that, and I know the kind of the scarce resources you're dealing with as you address that problem. A Native American living on reservation lands can expect fewer police officers, longer emergency response time, and higher crime rates than the average person living outside of Indian country. I know that I'm not alone in finding these disparities disturbing and unfair. I'm pleased to see that this administration, the Department of Justice, and the FBI are all supplementing the resources, the increased resources provided by this committee last year to address this problem. And I know it's further disturbing, fundamentally disturbing, that the victims and the targets of these crimes are predominantly women. And because of the jurisdictional issues, there are difficult questions, just structurally difficult questions going in to an investigation and helping to provide law enforcement activities in Indian country. But there's also just a fundamental lack of resources, too. So can you describe the trends the FBI has seen in the level and types of crimes committed in Indian country over some reasonable period over the last 5 years?
Probably have to get back to you with specific statistics on that.
For the record, please.
I can do that. I will tell you that I have tried to corral off the resources that the Bureau is putting into Indian country from September 11th. I had to reassign a number of criminal agents. I have left the same numbers of criminal agents working in Indian country since that time, but it still is inadequate. It's not enough. When you say crimes against women, it's crimes against women and children. And we take the most serious ones, but it is inadequate. And I'm not certain ultimately that we in the FBI can satisfy the need for police services in Indian country. It's going to take other organizations to be ramped up, have the training and the capability of addressing crimes on Indian reservations, as well as ourselves. It's an issue that we try to address with the resources that have been allocated to it. We've requested additional resources and are getting some, but it still is not necessarily adequate to the crime that we've seen grow over the last several years.
Well, I commend you for your request for additional resources, and I can assure you this subcommittee is going to be inclined to be responsive. But on a practical level, as I understand it, there are over 200 individual reservations, and that you have approximately just over 100 officers to cover those 200 reservations. Does that sound right?
That's correct. That's correct.
I mean, I guess it just prompts me to ask, what can you expect to accomplish when you're spread that thin? And I mean, that's on the face of it inadequate.
What we accomplish is we address the most serious cases with the United States attorneys, but our agents' work are stretched. Their caseload is unbelievable. The time they spend away from their families and other life to provide the services to the Indian country is truly remarkable. But every one of them thinks that they're doing contributing substantially in the work that they're doing. But we are overstretched. Others who, the state and local authorities who may have some concurrent jurisdiction are also overstretched. but we do what we can with the resources that are allocated to it. The one thing I have seen made certain is that they have not been reduced, even though we have the first priority of stopping the next terrorist attack.
For the record, either here, if you're able to provide it accurately, or for the written record, how would you compare your law enforcement presence in Indian country to your presence in comparably sized rural areas?
I think it'd really be difficult to look at apples and oranges. There are areas in the far west where we have very, very low coverage, but the population is fairly low. I would have to get back to you in response to that question.
Well, maybe this would be an even better comparison. How about the areas where crime rates are comparable to those in Indian country? In other words, where are the areas with comparable crime rates to crime rates in Indian country, and how do you compare your coverage in those areas to Indian country?
I'd have to get back to you.
Did you follow that?
Yes, sir.
So the record followed? Good. President Obama's budget request proposes to add 45 new agents to your program. As I understand, those agents are to be funded out of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Why that arrangement? Why aren't the requests for those increased number of agents being requested for in your budget?
I would have to get back to you on that, sir. Okay. I'm not familiar with the intricacy of that arrangement. Excuse me just a second. I'd have to get back to you. That I do believe that we want to prioritize it, but we've got the white-collar crime, terrorism, and the like, and consequently, we are looking for support in terms of adding agents for this particular responsibility. We have somewhat the same understandings when it comes to healthcare fraud, for instance, with other departments, HHS. And so we were
transferring the money to pay for your agents.
Provide yes.
Well, I don't know. Maybe with healthcare or maybe with white-collar crime, they're spiking in these areas, so maybe it makes sense to fund them out of other budgets. It doesn't make sense to me, for these agents to be paid for from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, because I don't think there's any contention, or I'm not sure anybody would contend that this is a spike, that this is going to go away. And I think funding them in the Bureau of Indian Affairs creates the situation where you're not building your base, and those dollars could disappear very easily. Different subcommittees have different priorities and different demands on their dollars. I think we'd rather see this funding, particularly, included in your base, so it becomes a part of your base, so that there's a consistency and a dependability about the availability of the agents we're able to increase that are dedicated to these assignments.
To work with the committee on that, sir.
Just to get some other information highlighting the problems in Indian country, the FBI budget request also proposes to add 2 forensics examiners to your lab to address evidence processing for Indian country cases. 2 forensic examiners. The budget notes that the 164-day average turnaround time for Indian country cases is so lengthy that the results are often useless for purposes of intelligence and lead generation. I mean, it's just almost an inadequacy to the point of, I don't know, of not being able to really provide the service in Indian country. So we're very pleased to see this requested increase, and I think we'll be very responsive to it. Do you know, or give us for the record again, how does the turnaround time, 164-day average turnaround time for lab case processing, compare to the lab-wide average turnaround for evidence processing?
I'd have to get back to you on that. But also, one of the things we had requested is, yes, additional examiners in the FBI laboratory, but there are other laboratories that are closer to Indian country that might provide same services if they had funding.
Okay, well, we'll certainly look at it from that perspective as well.